Hey guys, coming another movie for guys. Now this movie reviewing, this was definitely a movie that I was so looking forward to seeing. I'm sure most of you were looking forward to seeing. In fact, it's probably some of you guys' most anticipated film for the rest of the year. Now it's not mine. It definitely was very high up there, and I definitely was really looking forward to see it. And that movie is none other than a movie that, like I said, will definitely be on, like I said, everyone's anticipated list, and a movie that probably everyone is going to see this weekend and is probably going to be talking about. And that is none other than Rogue One, a Star Wars story. Let's talk about this movie, because going into it, I really did not know what this movie was exactly going to be. And it's mainly because the first trailer got me really, really hyped. I really loved the first trailer for this movie. I thought it was extremely well done. Then the reshoots happened. I started to get a little bit worried because reshoots is what plagued a lot of the recent DC films, and that very much worried me that this wasn't going to be, and I'm not trying to be stereotypical, oh, reshoots are bad. No, some reshoots need to happen. I understand that sometimes a scene doesn't go the way they want it to, and they realize that, oh, that didn't go right, let's just reshoot it. I understand why they need to do that, but in this case, I really was worried about the reshoots, and that's something that definitely did make me worried. So going into this, I really did not know how this movie was going to be. And let me just say that while I don't think Rogue One is as nearly as good as The Force Awakens, I think overall Rogue One is a really well done prequel that very well tells a story that has up till now been hidden, that I think is overall very interesting. It's certainly not up to par with The Force Awakens or the original trilogy, but it is definitely the best of the prequels we have gotten from Star Wars so far. So let's get to the basic plot of Rogue One, but basically, the plot of Rogue One is we focus on our main character, Jyn Erso. She is this daughter of her father is Galen Erso, played by Mads Mikkelsen, and this is someone who has recently designed the Death Star, something that he really is not okay with designing. He's really not into it, and basically he has plans to basically essentially destroy the Death Star because he hates everything that the Empire stands for, and she helps him try to retrieve these plans and try to make sure that the Death Star is destroyed. And that basically is the plot of Rogue One overall. I don't want to say anything else or also be spoiling the movie, but let's just get into this movie, starting off with the cast. Now, when it comes to Star Wars, while I think that, yes, the action is very important, and yes, I think the story's important, what really matters with these movies are, in fact, the characters. And why I say the characters matter so much is because these are characters that we're going to be, following for all these movies. Just like Force Awakens did such a great job with creating some fantastic characters that are up to par with the original. I'm one of the few people who likes Force Awakens. I don't know why so many people dislike that movie all of a sudden. It just seems like the cool thing now is to hate Force Awakens. I don't know why. I actually love Force Awakens. It was like my top 5 movie of last year. I don't know why so many people are hating on it, but either way, let's get to the cast for this movie. Let's first talk about Felicity Jones as Jyn Erso. I thought that she was fantastic. I really love Felicity Jones in this role. I thought that she did a really great job as this character who, while she doesn't fully understand what the Death Star is, she's doing it for her father, and she has a very specific reason for doing what she's doing, and I thought overall she did a really good job in this movie overall. I definitely really did love her role here. And what I also love about Jyn Erso is that she's not the greatest person. I mean, Jyn Erso, we've seen throughout the movie, we're introduced to her, she's in prison in the movie. This is not someone who is the most who is always on the good side of things. This is someone who is kind of on the wrong side of the tracks, and I thought it was kind of interesting to follow this character. But Felicity Jones really made her stand out very well. I really thought she did a good job here, and I don't think that she was as good as Daisy Ridley last year, but overall she carries this movie really well. I really did like her character, and overall I thought she definitely was really, really great. Definitely she was really good here. And Diego Luna as Cassian, who is her sidekick in the movie, I thought also was really good here. I liked the chemistry between her and Cassian. I thought overall he was a pretty good sidekick. Not the best character, but we'll get into that a little bit later, but I thought overall he did do a good job. I definitely did like what he did here. And then Donnie Yen plays a very interesting character as Imwe. This is this blind warrior who is like obsessed with the Force, and that's essentially everything his character is, but he does a really good job doing it. I mean, this is someone who he's kind kind of crazy, and they don't really give him a ton of development, but you care about him nonetheless. And I thought for the most part he did a really good job with this. I definitely did like what Donnie Yen had to do here. I thought overall he was really good. Mads Mikkelsen, I think definitely this kind of made up for Mads Mikkelsen's lack of screen time in Doctor Strange, because he was definitely really good here. He has basically the same amount of screen time as he did in Doctor Strange, but I thought his character was a lot better. I actually really did care about Galen. I thought everything that he stood for, you really understood. And I'm not going to say everything about him, but let's just say he doesn't really support the Empire, and he's kind of forced to believe in something that he doesn't really want to believe. And I thought all of that was very interesting. I really did like what they did with his character overall. He definitely was very well fleshed out. I definitely really liked what they did with him. I thought he was really good. And the relation between him and Jin is one of the most essential parts of this movie. The way that these two begin to understand each other, the way that Galen really cares about Jin, the way that she does everything to protect her father and finish what he started, I thought overall was a very well done bond. I really did love what they did with these two overall, and I thought that definitely was one of the best parts of this movie. But then we get to Alan Tudyk as K2SO, who I loved this character. I thought he did such a great job. He was so funny, so likable, and he very well makes up as the BB-8 of this movie, or the C-3PO of this movie, if you will. I thought overall he was great here. I love what K2SO had to do here. His bond with Cassian is actually another one of the most interesting things about this movie. The bond that these two had, I thought was really well done. I thought that they worked very well as friends, and he's got some interesting stuff going on in the movie I thought was well done overall, and I like what they did with him. Riz Ahmed, surprisingly, is in this movie, who I'm very happy to see had something to do here, because I loved Riz Ahmed the night of, as you guys know. I think he's one of one of the breakout actors of the year for sure. I love seeing his character here. His character didn't have a ton to do, but I like what he did overall. I thought Bodhi was an interesting character. I like what they did with him overall. He definitely was pretty good. And then Jiaying Wen as this character Baze, I thought was also pretty good here. Definitely he did a good job. Now let's talk about the two who are kind of 50-50 for me. Ben Mendelsohn plays the main villain in this movie, director Krennic, and he's very in and out. Sometimes I thought he worked really, really well, and he was kind of an effective villain, but at the same time, he's kind of supposed to be an ineffective villain because Darth Vader is in fact his master. I mean, this is someone who he bows down to, and someone that really who he commends and everything and really respects and things like that. This is in fact his main this is his master and everything. He's not really the guy in charge of this stuff, but he is in fact the villain in this movie. And sometimes I thought he did get a bit too over the top, but I thought he did a good job of what he had. Just not all the best performance I've seen from Ben Mendelsohn. I thought he was good for the most part, but I just didn't really see much of a motivation for his character. I mean, I kind of understood what he was doing, but for the most part, I thought he was just okay. Not really the best villain we've had. Kind of on the same level as some of the more ineffective villains we had in Star Wars, because I really did find him to be kind of an ineffective villain, especially when we get to the end of this movie. He really was quite ineffective in the end. Forrest Whitaker, as well as Saw, I thought was good what he did here. He's not in the movie a ton, but I thought for the most part he was pretty good in this movie. He has definitely a very interesting voice, I definitely will say that, and you're definitely not going to expect when his character comes up, but he did a good job. I like what he did here. They definitely did a good job with his character overall. And now let's talk about arguably the most anticipated role this entire film. James Earl Jones does in fact come back as Darth Vader, but don't expect him to have something that substantial to do, because while he does have, I think, a great amount of stuff to do in this movie, because they give him some really badass scenes, he only has about, I think, 3 scenes in this entire movie, which is kind of disappointing, but at the same time, I think they gave him the right amount of stuff to do. I'm not really complaining that they gave him not enough. I think that they gave him the right amount of stuff to do, but just don't expect Darth Vader to be a huge part of this movie. It's just when you get to the ending, it really doesn't make sense why he was so much to the side. But the caster, for the most part, I thought did a really good job. I thought overall they were all very well casted and very much do make up for the rest of the way this movie is, because now let's get to my real problems with the movie, which is the directing and the writing. So first of all, let's talk about the directing here by Gareth Edwards, because there has been so much talk about Gareth Edwards as a director. This is someone who I do in fact respect. I don't think that he's a bad actor. I think he's, Godzilla I wasn't the hugest fan of. I love the first act of the movie. I don't particularly love the second act. I thought the rest of the movie was kind of boring. I know he's really good with monsters, but I thought this movie he was a good choice for, because this is someone who really does know Star Wars really well. He tried to make this as much of a passion project as he possibly could. And I think his directing did work in some aspects, and in some aspects, it really did falter. This is kind of a tonally inconsistent movie in the first two acts. I definitely will say that. There are some scenes that are really well done and are really well thought out and really creative, and I think are really dark and have the right amount of intensity and things like that. And then there are some scenes that are supposed to be comedic that just kind of come out of nowhere. They're just kind of there to be shocking, and I don't really know why Gareth Edwards did this in the movie. Definitely, I think the tone was a bit inconsistent. But I will say the third act definitely did make up for it. I'm going to get into that when we get to the screenplay. But I thought Gareth Edwards, his directing wasn't really the best thing about this movie. I think it definitely was a bit tonally inconsistent. It's significantly darker, I definitely will say. It definitely does not feel like a Star Wars movie at points, and I did like that. I like to try to be its own thing. But at the same time, sometimes it is feeling like a Star Wars movie. So I really couldn't tell what Gareth Edwards wanted to do tonally with this movie. But I thought for the most part it worked. I just couldn't really tell what he was really trying to do. Was he trying to make it his own thing, or was he trying to make it a Star Wars program? I really couldn't tell what he was trying to do here. Just sometimes it really did. It was kind of like very in and out with me, the way that was done. But let's get to the screenplay, because by far the worst thing about this movie is the screenplay. And like I said in the beginning of this review, this movie went under significant reshoots, and it definitely does show. I mean, a lot of this movie feels very, very brokenly edited, and it feels like there's stuff missing that they had to put in here and that they took out because they didn't feel belonged. And like I said, I get that sometimes things don't go the way you want them to, and sometimes you have to change things, and I totally understand that. But the screenplay in this movie is very, very jumbled. The first act, especially, is a very rocky start. I really did not know if I was going to like this movie in the first act. It takes a very long time for this movie to actually get going. And the way they start this movie is so sloppily done, between just intercutting between all these different worlds about these characters that we don't really know jack shit about at the time. So there's not really, much they can really do with them. They can't really develop them that well. And that was kind of a problem that I did have with this movie, is that I felt like the characters, besides Jin and besides maybe the blind dude, I can't even think of his name right now, and even Mads Mikkelsen, besides those characters, I really didn't care about the other characters in this movie. Now, did I think that the actors did a good job? Yeah, but I don't really think they were given the necessary development that they needed. And it's kind of hard to do when you're introducing all these new characters that haven't really been seen before. It is definitely hard to do. See, Force Awakens, it worked because that is a setup movie. That is a movie that is setting up the next two films, while also subsequently being a really damn good character-driven film, while Rogue One is in fact a standalone movie. And because of it being a standalone film, it doesn't exactly work in the sense of character. This is not the most character consistent film. In fact, there are times the characters are completely just saying everything that they do, and I don't really know why they chose to do that with a Star Wars movie. I mean, this is a Star Wars movie. They can go a lot deeper into these characters than they did in this movie, and I don't really know why they chose to go this route. I think they could have gone a lot deeper into them, especially with someone like, say, Diego Luna's character, who I really did not care that much about, or even Alan Tudyk, who I thought was good. Alan Tudyk definitely did a good job in this movie, but it doesn't go much more beyond him just being a droid whose memory is wiped, and he has a bond with Casey, and other than that, there's not really much else to him. A lot of these characters are very, very basic. They have like one flaw, and they don't really build it. It's almost like Gareth Edwards, or whoever did the screenplay, because I can't really think of who did the screenplay. Chris Wise and Tony Gilroy. It almost seems like these two people who did the screenplay didn't really know what to do with these characters, so they just didn't really develop them that much. They kind of just did whatever with them, and it definitely did make up in the third act, which I'll definitely get into. But for the first two acts, I really couldn't figure out where they were going with these characters. I didn't really know what they wanted to do with them, and that definitely did not really work for me in terms of the way the screenplay was done. However, I will say the movie does do a good job in terms of fan service, because they don't beat you over the head with it constantly. There are occasional references to things that are going on. They show you things from the previous movies, and that makes sense, because yeah, that is definitely going on at the time that this is going on. But it's not one of those things where it's like, oh, this was happening at this time. Like, it's not just a fan service movie, and I really did appreciate that. I like that they attempted to make this something more, and I thought they did a good job with that overall, with the way they did the fan service. I definitely really did appreciate that. And the aspects of this movie that I thought were really well done, there are some really great scenes in here, like I said. I just don't know if as a movie, it really does fit all the way together. But then the third act comes around, and the third act completely blew me away. I mean, the third act makes up for pretty much everything in the first two acts. I thought the third act is one of the most epic climaxes I have seen all year. I think the way they did it was really well done. Despite it being predictable, it was definitely worth it because I was into what was going on. It's very thrilling. You don't really know how things are going to play out, and I thought for the most part the way they did that with the third act really did make up for the rest of this movie. And I thought the story, once it actually got going, because I'm not going to tell you the real plot of this movie, the real plot of this movie is definitely a spoiler, was definitely really interesting. Once the story actually got going, I very much got into this movie. It just takes a long time for this team to assemble and for them to actually, you know, start this goal of trying to destroy the Death Star. It takes a long time for them to actually try to do that. But you're definitely rooting for them. Even though I didn't care as much about these characters, I was definitely rooting for them. Like, I definitely was on their side. But then, like I said, I do like that these characters do some things that aren't exactly completely just. There are definitely some things they do that are kind of in the wrong. I think they did that really well in terms of screenplay, and that's something else that I thought was really well done, is the way that that was done. I think the screenplay, like I said, for the first two acts was definitely kind of choppily edited, but I did really love the story overall. I think in the third act, it really did make up for it, and that's something I definitely will commend them on. However, the best aspect of this movie, besides the third act, is the cinematography, because damn is the cinematography good. I mean, I saw this movie in IMAX 3D, and you can definitely tell, like, they definitely did shoot this with IMAX cameras, and the cinematographer here, Greg Fraser, I think very meticulously shot every single scene in this movie so well. I think he did an incredible job with that. It definitely feels like we're back in that old universe, and I think it was very well shot in the way that that was done. Just everything between the way the movie is shot, the way the movie looks, the way the action scenes. I mean, there are so many amazing action scenes in this film that I definitely really did appreciate, and I thought was overall really well shot, and I definitely really did love all the cinematography overall. It's definitely something I will say. I don't know if it's going to get best cinematography, but it is stunning at times, and I definitely really did love the cinematography in this movie. One of the best aspects of this movie by far. The score by Michael Giacchino, I like that he tried to make it its own thing. I know a lot of people are complaining they didn't use a lot of Star Wars music, but hey, it's not really supposed to be a Star Wars movie. It's supposed to be its own thing, and I think because of that, he did a good job making the score its own thing, and I thought it was well done. It felt more thrilling, it felt in the moment, and I really did like that. I will definitely say I think the movie is a bit overlong. I definitely was starting to feel the length, but once that third act rolled around, I really didn't feel it. I thought the third act was very frenetic. It was very fast moving. There wasn't really a second to breathe, and I thought for the most part the third act is one of the best third acts I have seen all year, and that's something that I definitely will say. In the third act, the last 40 minutes of this movie is truly incredible, and that's something I definitely will give them, as I think the third act really does make up for how rocky, especially the first act is, because the first act definitely takes a while to get going. The second act was better, I will say it. The second act's not bad. It's just the third act completely kicks the first and second act's ass. Like, everything about the third act, though, was incredible. I love the way the third act was shot, and that's just everything about it, the way the story was told, the references, the way they connect things together, I thought was really cool, and I definitely really did appreciate that. Now, I'm not going to delve into spoilers in this video. I know you guys might expect me to now go into the point where I might talk about spoilers, but there's really not much to say about this movie, and that's something I will say, is that this movie is not exactly unpredictable. You know everything that's going to happen going into it. If you have seen the other Star Wars films, and you know the way that the Death Star ends, you know how this is going to end. You know exactly what's going to happen in the end of this movie. You know what's going to happen to these characters. You know where they're going to end, where they're going to start and end in this movie. And that's something I will say. There definitely are some things I thought were a bit unpredictable, and I do think it's a story that needs to be told, but it's not exactly the most unpredictable of movies. So because of that, there's not really a ton of shit to spoil. There's nothing really setting up the other films, and I don't really think there's much to delve into with spoilers. There are spoiler reviews guys can check out. I'm just not going to delve into them because I don't really have a ton to say. I don't really think there's anything that big that I really need to talk about. In terms of spoilers, I'm just not really going to talk about them in this. overall, guys, I think Rogue One is a very well done Star Wars prequel. I don't at all think it is a perfect film, but I do think it is a movie that if I watched a second time, I will definitely love a lot more. I think that the cast was really well done here. I think we had some really interesting stuff with the characters. I just think that these characters were very underwritten and they could have done a lot more with them. And I really did leave the movie definitely satisfied, but I definitely felt like something was missing. I wanted something more from this movie. And in the end, I was a little bit, while I was disappointed by Rogue One, the third act definitely did make up for the movie overall. I still definitely was disappointed by this movie, but I still really did enjoy it. I think as a Star Wars movie, it's a lot of fun. It has some incredible action sequences, and definitely a movie that if you are a Star Wars fan, I definitely would say you need to see, especially if you are a fan of the classic ones. This is definitely a movie to check out, especially for the third act. There are definitely some really cool things they do in that, especially some really cool references that if you're a huge Star Wars enthusiast of the first three movies, you will definitely not want to miss. And I am definitely going to give Rogue One: A Star Wars Story a 3.5 out of 5 or a B. But overall, guys, my review of Rogue One: A Star Wars Story. Let me know what you guys thought of this movie overall. Loved your thoughts on it. I'm sorry if I didn't love this movie. Some people love this movie. Some people hate this movie. I'm very much down the middle. I think I can grow to love this movie, definitely, as time goes on. But right now, I think it is a good movie. I don't think it's a perfect movie, but I definitely really did enjoy it overall. But that's it for this video. Hope you guys enjoy it. If you guys want to talk spoilers, just private message me. I just don't really feel there was a ton to talk about, honestly. I feel like everything that happened, I expected to happen, and there's not really much else to delve into. So that's it for this video. Hope you guys enjoyed it. We'll see you guys in my next video, which will be for The Exorcist. I do have 2 episodes to review that, and we'll see you guys for that. Okay, bye.